It's like, fuck you, Ryanair. Welcome back to Business Blaze. I'm your host Simon. Today, because of the privileged position I get to sit in as someone who makes videos on YouTube, I said to Danny, one of our writers, hey Danny, can you really get flights for £1? Was that ever really a thing? Because when I was like, not a kid, but as a teenager and like early 20s maybe, especially when I was doing a lot of traveling, I'd see these flights and they'd be like, you can fly for £1 to, Europe or whatever. And I want to know if these were really a thing, so I asked Danny, go find out about it, Danny. And he wrote me this. Way back in the middle of the 20th century, air travel was geared almost exclusively towards the elite members of the fabulously wealthy, the jet-set social group. In other words, most normal people were still happily packing their buckets and spades and taking the drive down to the local seaside resort to enjoy their holidays. I feel this is true. Like, my nan, I don't think she really ever left the country. The idea of going on a plane to her was really alien. You would never even dream of going on something as exotic as boarding an airplane unless you were proper, filthy, stinking rich. She was a doctor, so she wasn't important. Maybe she just didn't like going on holiday. Also, have you guys seen those pictures? They go do the rounds, I swear, like on Reddit, like once a year. It'll be flying was so much better in the past, and it's like a picture of a lady like carving a roast in economy. And then at first I was like, wow, flying was so much better. Until you realize how insanely, like those economy tickets where they're sitting in kind of like bad seats, which probably don't even have seatbelts, they're way more than first class would cost today. Not to mention way more fucking dangerous. Thankfully, the prices naturally tumbled over the decades as commercial airlines became more cost effective and more accessible to the everyday traveler. But just how absurdly low did the prices tumble? Back in the 90s and noughties, cheap and cheerful airlines such as Ryanair and EasyJet were making bold marketing claims in press advertisements that you could book a single flight for as little as £1. That's right, so I didn't imagine it. It was possible. It was advertised. That doesn't mean it's possible. As we're gonna see, this has got Michael O'Leary in it. Probably should avoid saying some stuff because I don't want to get sued by Michael O'Leary. But did £1 or $1 flights ever really exist? And if so, how on earth did airlines ever manage to stay in business if they were practically giving away seats for pocket change? Before putting together this piece, I love it when Danny gets all personal. He says, my own gut feeling was that crazy cheap flights had to either be a myth or a marketing scam or just a strange dream. I've racked up a few air miles in my time. Air miles are confusing. Like, I feel like I fly a lot, not a lot, but like more than the average person. And every time I'm just like, I'm just going to take the cheapest flight. And they're like, yeah, but if you go with this line, you get your Avios points. I mean, yeah, but it's like 100 quid more. How much is the airline points worth? Not that much. So Danny's racking up his airline points while I'm not. While I like to think that I've picked up some bargain deals here and there, I can't recall ever booking a flight for anywhere near as cheap as under £10. The very idea seems ludicrous to me. Me too. So my first step was to reach out on social media, original research, and ask if any of my frequent flyer friends, followers, and stalkers, glad it's not just me, had ever really bought a flight for only £1. The initial response surprised me. So many people replied that yes, they had most definitely bought a one-way flight for £1. One of them even showed me the ticket from 2004 as proof. But digging a little deeper, I got into the details, and it wasn't quite as it seemed. I'm like with Danny on this one. I really feel like it's going to be a myth because you can't do it for £1. There's going to be some catch, and it's not like EasyJet and Ryanair are known for Ryanair are known for their straightforward pricing. Quite the opposite, in fact. Robert claims that he'd once got a return ticket with Ryanair from London to Dublin for just £1. Return, so that's 50p each way. That sounded a little too good to be true, but he was insistent. I asked him if he had to pay any other charges along the way, and this is where the real story unfolded. Yes, of course, he replied. He had to pay a booking fee. He had to pay the airport tax. He had to pay luggage charges. He had to pay seating costs. The list, it went on and on. In the end, his true cost of the journey was closer to £50 than £1. But the weird thing is that in Robert's head, he still got a flight for £1. That's what it said on the ticket, and that's what he was happy with. Robert is a victim of good marketing, because he paid £25 each way, and he probably still has like a positive impression of whichever airline he flew with. Another friend, Jamie, he told me he had booked a single flight with Jet2.com from Leeds to Amsterdam for just £1. That's a very short flight, but still £1. But Jamie had a really different and more realistic mindset to Robert about the whole deal. Robert's an idiot. Sure, she paid. Oh, Jamie's a girl. Yeah, Jamie is a gender neutral name. Is it? It is. Sure, she paid £1 to get there, but she had to pay top whack around £100 for the return flight home. As she had no pressing plans to set up a new home in Amsterdam, she was very aware that she'd been lured in by a £1 deal, which had ended up costing her over 100 times as much in total, but she knew that was how it worked, and she was still happy with the deal in total. See, I would say, assuming this was a bit back in the day, let's say 10 years ago, £100 for a return from Leeds to Amsterdam is average or maybe a little expensive, I would feel, because I think if I flew with the cheapest airline from where I live in Prague to London, which is a much longer flight, I could get that for around 100 quid. I just booked a flight there this morning. It was about 180, but I booked it 2 weeks before, which is probably a mistake. Also, if I were Jamie, I'm so cheap, I'd be like, well, I guess I now live in Amsterdam. Taking a good look through online customer stories, there are people out there who are adamant that they have bought single flights for £1 with no other extra charges of any kind. But they seem to be very much the exception rather than the rule. And they nearly always involve journeys in which a return ticket was not required. I have a personal anecdote I'll share in a bit. Let's just crack on for now. Way back in 2002, the BBC's Watchdog team conducted their own investigation into whether the super cheap prices of the era were a genuine bargain or a misleading marketing scam. Watchdog's like a cool BBC show where they look into stuff like this. At the time, Ryanair were promoting one-way tickets to Dublin for as little as £9 on selected flights only. Those last 4 words seem to be the get-out clause. Selected flights, on selected flights only. The cheapest deal that Watchdog team could find was £106 on a return ticket. Buzz, I remember Buzz. I think Buzz went out of business. They were a low-cost airline. Buzz were promoting a £19 single flight to Paris at the time, but the best deal offered to Watchdog was £118 return. Meanwhile, EasyJet were advertising customers to book early to claim a £32.50 single ticket to Barcelona, but there was no indication of just how early. Much earlier, like the 1980s. When Watchdog tried to book the ticket 2 weeks in advance, they were given a quote of £175 for a return ticket. To be fair, Watchdog, 2 weeks ahead is not early. I just made a joke about booking a flight and said like 2 weeks is late. Who's like, I'm gonna go on holiday, book 2 weeks ahead. Well, me. I'll mention my personal anecdote now and then we'll move on. There was what I will say is an unnamed site. Back in the day, I was doing a bit of traveling and I had like a blog that I kept for my family, but it was online so anyone could read it, but no one would, because who cares? And there was one site, which I won't name, and they would also always advertise flights, so you'd search like, cheap flight to Malaysia. And they'd be like, we've got flights to Malaysia for £224. I'd be like, perfect, I'm gonna find this flight. I was an unemployed, it was after I was a student, I had nothing to do. I literally had a job that I was ready to quit, and I'll be like, I will fly anytime to pretty much any place from anywhere. So I was like, all right, company, I want that £224 flight. I don't care, I'm taking that flight. And I could not find it anywhere. Phoned them up, I tried to get it, I went through everything. And then eventually I wrote them like this long blog post like saying, I tried this and I couldn't find it, like Watchdog, and I posted that online, and then that sat there for about 5 years, and then they sent me a cease and desist. And I was like, I'm pretty sure, like, I did a law degree, and I'm pretty sure they got no standing, but I'm like, I'm not gonna go to court, so I just took it down. It was like a 5-year-old blog, but the reason was because if you searched company name scam, my article would be the one that came up. It's the only article that was popular on my blog. Let's get back to the article. That was a tangent. While some people may well have been lucky enough to claim a £1 single ticket because they just so happened to book at 9:30 a.m. on the last Tuesday of the month when the wind was blowing in the right direction, the truth of the matter seems to be that crazy price deals were primarily more of a marketing ploy than a functioning business model. Can't say I am surprised. You might be tempted to think that empty seats on a flight are bad news for an airline. I was, but I actually know better, because I've read about this before. And that it's better to sell a seat at a 90% discount than not sell a seat at all. Surely even £1 is better than nothing. That might be true to some degree for buses and for trains, but it's not quite the same story for airlines. It costs a bit of money upfront for an airline to turn a new bum on a seat into a profitable move. We're not talking about megabucks here, but the airline will first have to pay the airport tax for that bum on the seat, and they'll have to pay for the fuel required for the extra weight. Even if you consider yourself to be super slim, it's a fact that your bum on a seat is going to burn fuel. So you're talking about a cost of roughly £9 before the airline can even begin to consider making a profit. That's surprisingly cheap. I thought it would be more. I guess that's for a super short haul. Anything less than that is likely to make a loss, and the airline would be better off keeping the seat empty. It's also worth bearing in mind that if airlines did start, and Danny doesn't mention this, and this is new to me, my reasoning for the airlines not selling the seats, or the reasoning that I read, was because if the airline, if BA's like, yeah, well, if the seats are empty, we'll just sell them all at 90% off last minute. I'd just go to the airport and be like, Simon from 10 years ago was looking to get that cheap flight. He'd just go to the airport and be like, all right, where am I going? I want that 90% off flight. I'll just go wherever. Timbuktu, which is a real place, I will go there. Maybe not. Maybe it's not safe. I don't even know where it is. This goes some way explaining why £9 flights seem to be a little more common than £1 flights. Although pretty rare back in the day, a £9 flight had the potential to not only break even, but ideally make a profit for the airline if a customer bought extras on the flight, such as massively overpriced and crap food or drink. Well, the drinks aren't bad. A beer is a beer, but the food is always pretty dire. The problem with £1 flights is that customers would have to really go to town on extras in order to recoup the loss for the seat and make a profit for the airline. Bearing in mind that nearly all crazy price deals were for short haul flights anyway, and the customer wouldn't have much time to get too peckish, even the chances of making a profit from £9 are fairly slim. Not always. I mean, yeah, £1 flights. My experience, I've never taken a £1 flight, but I flew from Kuala Lumpur, which is in Malaysia, to London for £149. There's an airline called AirAsia, and about 10 years ago they were trying to expand with something called AirAsia X. And they're doing these promotional codes between Kuala Lumpur and London one way, and it just so happens that about 6 months previously I'd flown out to Asia one way with another airline, and I just happened to be in Kuala Lumpur, and I was like, yeah, now seems like a pretty good time to go home. £149, I'll do it. It was a bit rough. It was a long-haul flight without food, without entertainment. I mean, you could buy food, but it was expensive, so I think I just ate crisps. And there was no in-flight entertainment. It was a bit and today I'd be like, I'll just pay more. But £149 was cheap as. So, in conclusion, with a few and stay tuned, don't leave just yet. I know conclusions can be a bit boring. We got some bonus facts coming. Stick with me. So in conclusion, with a few rare exceptions, the days of £1 flights were really about getting your attention and tempting you into the domain of the airline rather than actually selling you tickets for £1. Yeah, just like the personal anecdotes that Danny got. It's like, yeah, we're regularly, come on, and then it's like £100. It's like, fuck you, Ryanair. We heard from Robert and Jamie. I should read this before I just ramble. They were initially seduced by the prospect of an absurdly low price, which they never actually got. But they were still reasonably happy with the deal, and they were eventually offered by the company. You don't see too many crazy low price deals these days, and I'd like to think it's because businesses in general have cottoned onto the fact that it's better to set realistic expectations from the beginning than disappoint customers within the first few minutes. I think that's spot on, Danny. Maybe customers are more savvy and less tolerant in the digital age. They're more likely to close down a website window and shop around in cyberspace if they ever get the sense that they're being misled by slightly dodgy marketing. I completely agree. I think if I see a £1 flight, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be some horrible, it's not gonna be good. It's gonna be, yeah, you're flying out at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Wonderful. And you're flying to this airport, which is, in Barcelona. It's just 4 hours outside of the city. But are promises of super low flights just a thing of the past? Not necessarily. Ooh. If the chief executive of Ryanair is to be believed, they could soon go to lower than ever before. How about completely free? Michael O'Leary, back again, recently shared his vision of free flights at the London Operators Association conference in London. It may sound like pie in the sky, it does indeed, but there's actually a bit of sound logic to the idea. The plan would be to fill more flights than ever before and lure customers into airports with completely free tickets. In return, the airlines would take a cut of the increased revenues from airports, who would naturally benefit from the potentially huge surge in football. That does make sense. Ryanair is, they're very known for their crazy things that they'll say to get media attention, and well, here we are giving them media attention. Good. So even these £1 deals, they may still be beaten. Keep watching the skies. I am massively skeptical. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Number one. Oh, bonus fact, sorry, yeah. Number one. Ryanair generated controversial headlines and media coverage in What a surprise! In 2009, when they announced that they were considering charging passengers £1 to use the in-flight toilet. I'd be like, no, I'm being in a bottle. There was naturally an outcry, but it was just, in fact, a clever PR stunt. Oh, this is exactly what Ryanair do. Ryanair were considering no such thing, but much of the accompanying media coverage referenced the fact that Ryanair were also removing check-in desks from airports and replacing them with a new online check-in system. And this is what Ryanair was sneakily trying to promote through the back door. Indeed. Also, speaking of back doors, that's where I always get on a Ryanair flight, because I won't pay to move my seat to the front. Number 2. Ryanair have often found themselves in hot water over misleading advertising, including a probe by the UK Office of Fair Trading in 2008, which found the airline to have breached advertising rules no less than 7 times in 2 years.
Shocker.
Later, in 2010, the Advertising Standards Authority ruled that a promotion for £10 one-way fares to European destinations was likely to mislead, as it did not include details of all the compulsory surcharges and fees. Like, who was the girl who was going to have to live in Amsterdam? Bonus fact number 3. On a slightly more trivial note, it's Ryanair again. A Ryanair advertisement from 2011 was banned simply because it promised a place in the sun destinations, when in fact, some of the promoted destinations were famous for very chilly temperatures and only 3 hours of sunlight a day. Ryanair, if you want to go to the North Pole, we're your company. That was... what were we talking about? I feel like we were just dunking on Ryanair the whole video. Oh yeah, £1 flights. That was £1 flights. Business Blaze topic suggestions like this. This was just me scratching in it and having Danny write up a script for us. But if you've got script suggestions for me, below, we'll get them written up. If I find them interesting, upvote the ones you like, and we'll do them here on Business Blaze. It'll be fun. Share this video if you want to, like it if you want to, definitely subscribe, smash that bell, and I'll see you next time.